I said no.
No.
Our population is supposed to be our advantage. Let me tell you, look at the history of any great nation, and you discover that no nation has been great without large population. Britain was the most industrialized economy in the 19th century because Britain had the largest population in Europe then. America took over from Britain because then America had the largest population. China eventually is today the largest economy because China has the world's largest population. India is doing everything to meet China or beat China because of population. Population is an advantage, but it becomes a disadvantage when you fail to mobilize the people. Exactly. When you fail to use it as a productive channel. When you don't do this, it becomes a problem. But Nigeria, where we are today, we are going to retool the economy, we are going to mobilize our people. How do you do that? If you continue to import goods, you continue to export jobs, and then your population becomes redundant. The people do not get work. So that is what is called vertical economic growth. But when you engage in horizontal economic growth, you mobilize the people, everybody becomes productive, at least 80% of the people becomes productive, it means that the economy will be growing sustainably and the population becomes an advantage.
Okay, let's go back.
When you have a situation like ours, where a large percentage is unemployed, I mean, what advantage is that to you then, having a large population?
Let me tell you, we can solve this problem if we come with the political will. It's not a big deal. I've said it time without number. We can mobilize our young men and women and put them to work. This is a question of policy choices. If this government, I have said it time without number, this government must mobilize the youth by making sure imported goods are kept out of the country. Two, we must come up with enabling social intervention policies that will make it possible for young men and women to get employed. And those who can get employed will now depend on the social welfare system we put in place. Because in 1933, when Roosevelt was made President of America, about 50% of Americans were out of job. And what did he do? He created a system that enabled the young men and women to work, including going to dig holes and close holes, going to clear trees, forests, and things like that. As long as you make people productive, they're adding value to the economy. So we must fix this problem, and I will assure you there's no way we're going to kill our brothers and sisters so that we reduce the population. In fact, I'm saying we must continue with the high population so that we now, as soon as this economy takes off industrially, you will see the advantage high population is. So I disagree that population, yes, right now it is because we have never taken the right policy choices. Of course, you know that this recession, there are two types of recession a country undergoes. What we are undergoing today is business-based recession. As far back as 5 years ago or 4 years ago, the average Nigerian had been undergoing recession because he is not actually having access to the basic things of life he's supposed to have access to. But this recession now is because of quantitative GDP growth that is losing its base. If you talk about qualitative GDP, you discover that Nigeria has never had qualitative GDP, where you have both multiplier effect and the trickle-down effect. So the problem now is that the multiplier effect is having problem. But those people that are supposed to engage and benefit from the trickle-down effect, which we now call it, a trickle-up effect, which is bottom-up based growth, are now feeling the pain, which you and I must have been felt 3 or 4 years ago, because your income has not dropped overnight. Your income has been what it had been 5 years ago or 3 years ago, only in that the cost associated with the income that your purchasing power has dropped drastically. But it is obvious because of the policy choices this country has made for the past 16 years, and especially during the past 6 years, when nothing was done to fix our infrastructure. So the cost of doing business in Nigeria prices out so many businesses in this country. So everybody engages in importation because that's the only way you can survive. If we fix the infrastructure, we reduce cost of doing business, and if we reduce cost of doing business, we become competitive, and if we become competitive, our economy will grow.
Okay. Now, Mr. Iwegbara said a lot about, the purchasing power of the Nigerian, dropping, and we've talked about cost reduction. Now, let's talk about redesigning the economy. There's a lot of talks around diversification. Some people have said agriculture, looking inwards. How do you think we can, generate revenue individually and as a country?
Yeah, thank you. As a country, Nigeria can generate low revenue through agriculture. And it's not necessarily by, as a government, directly being involved in the business of agriculture. No. It's by empowering the youth to go into agriculture, okay? And for that, the government can generate its own taxes, okay?
So all over the world, government of our population, as she in fact,
the population is a big advantage. Anywhere, even the reason why our GDP was growing before now was because we have a high population. Because GDP is a function of population. Because GDP, okay, is translated into the level of economic activity in an economy. So the more populated you are, the higher the level of economic activity carried out by the citizens. Yes. Okay, so that's why I've always suggested that this diversification we're talking about, we can start from agriculture. And how do we do it? We have a youth and National Youth Service Scheme, where youth corpers go into companies to serve, rather than going into agriculture. As a policy, because we need to declare a state of emergency on agriculture. And I would suggest that the government, as a policy, maybe for the next 5 years, NYSC corp members should actually get into the farms instead of serving.
Don't you think that would require a complete shift in their psyche? Because young people do not think farming. Young people think about wearing suits, wearing a tie, and going to an office.
No, that's why we say National Youth Service. It's just a one-year scheme. In some countries, you do your youth service as a paramilitary personnel. Mm-hmm. It's not something you plan for as part of your career, but it's a national service just for 1 year. Okay? And that's for government. For businesses or for individuals, where you can, instead of reducing your costs as a part of strategy for surviving the recession, you can also actually increase your revenue. That is even a much more dynamic strategy in recession than cost reduction. Of course, you have to do some level of cost reduction, but in a recession, it's more dynamic to diversify your income base, and that's by seeking for alternative sources of income.
The Nigerian has been said to have exotic taste. He wants to ride the best car in the world. He wants to wear the best clothes. He wants the best leather furniture in his house. And in the light of all this now, from what Mr. Iwegbara has said, that taste has to just go.
Of course.
I mean, Nigeria cannot afford all those things anymore. Where do you start from trying to curb the Nigerians' taste for the good things, the fine things of life?
Which is legal anyway.
No, it's not illegal. It's just that he can't afford it anymore. That's all. He doesn't have the money anymore. But even if he has the money, he may not even find it to buy.
You see, that's where we talk of market forces. Nobody will tell you, an individual, to reduce his taste in a recession period. It's automatic. Like you said, if you want luxury goods and you can't find it to buy, so what do?
But if I were a senator, for instance, and I still earn 20, 30 million naira a month, I would still be able to afford it.
That's if it's imported, isn't it?
Yes.
But where there's no forex to import it, where do you get it? Where do you get the goods from?
So I will have no choice.
You have no choice
than to just buy what is available.
Even this rice we talk about, rice is expensive. Rice is expensive. I used to ask myself, must you eat rice to survive?
Well, rice seems to be the staple food in Nigeria now.
But there are other staple foods.
But when I was growing up, rice was something you only ate on Sundays.
Exactly.
That was Sunday lunch.
So why must you eat rice?
Okay, so what else would you eat?
Of course, there are other local foods I can eat.
Gari is more expensive than rice.
No, I don't think so. Gari is still cheaper than rice.
Gari is expensive too.
It's expensive, but it's still relatively still cheaper
Anyway,
than rice.
let's bring in a tweet from Eniga Akiobin, and he's saying that the government must put more money in the economy. Talking about quantitative measure, the cost of borrowing should be reduced to 0%. Do you agree?
Yeah, very
0%.
No, it might not be possible to 0%. But that's why
when pigs fly.
I used to, I'm one of the very strong critics of CBN in terms of interest rates. In a recession period, for God's sake, interest rates are supposed to be going down. So I wonder why interest rate is high.
Yeah.
There's no developed country. Or as a matter of fact, there's no country that can develop with a high interest rate. Okay? Because when you make availability of funds very expensive, then how do you encourage productivity?
How indeed.
And the only way one of the ways out of recession, apart from the government spending, and it's not just for the government to spend, it has to be a productive spending. Okay? That will galvanize the economy.
All right, Mr. Mabwara, we need to shut down now. So your last word, going forward, what should Nigerians be doing?
First of all, we have to address the issue of interest rate. We have to do quantitative easing. The essence of the quantitative easing is, look, let's do it in order to do away with our debt overhang. Nigeria is spending 1 trillion every year to service the debt. We do quantitative easing and bring this into zero. And you know, when you do quantitative easing, one of the benefits is that there will be liquidity in the system. And also, government should come up with a government bank. Why can't we have the Global Bank of Nigeria?
Your closing
so that government will lend directly to businesses and things like that. And we bypass these banks that are just engaged in a cutthroat lending, cutthroat interest rates.
Thank you, Mr. Mabwara. Mr. Kasumu, your closing statement, please.
The current recession we are in was expedited because of lack of forex, because we depend much more on imports. And the only way out now, except the price of oil rises again, we might still be in trouble.
Okay, so thank you very much.
We need to increase our productivity.
Yeah. We have been talking to Doyin Kasumu, financial analyst, and Odelim Enwagbara, development economist. Sunrise will return, and it will be time to have Janet in the studio. See you shortly.